Houston takes on an Oakland team that honestly tanked Purdue in the AP poll and blows them out 78-45.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater that came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen post-game and for making Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the world. If you have something to say and just don't know what it is, you got something off your tongue or whatever, tell us in the comments down below what you think of Detroit-style pizza, because the Oakland Golden Grizzlies that hail from just outside of Detroit got crispied, fried up on the edges. Houston wins 78-45 in this one. And frankly, if it's possible, I don't know that it really ever felt that close. I'm talking about how this was supposed to be a trap game for Houston that did not turn into a trap game. I'm talking about the all three freshmen in their draft stock right now, because I think things are shifting in a fairly dramatic way, or at least they should be. And the third and final segment, I want to make sure that we talk some about what this game means in the big picture of things as we keep it going. Now, look, Houston comes into this one, and Oakland played thus far a top 10 Michigan team. They played the number one overall Purdue team, and then they played the number one overall Houston team. It's the only team to have ever played back-to-back number one teams in America when all three teams were in different conferences, right? Because in your conference schedule can be a little bit dicey or whatever. It happened once in the Big Eight back with Oklahoma and Missouri and Kansas, but I digress. That's not the way this worked out. Those non-conference matchups, right? Particularly weird. But after getting blown out by Michigan, Oakland went to Purdue and kind of shocked the world and had second half leads at different points of that game. In this game, I hypothesized during the week that Houston had to shoot the ball pretty well ultimately to keep that from happening to them. And I would point out that Purdue struggling with Oakland is likely what dropped them from number one to number two in the AP poll, and what thus catapulted Houston up to number one, right? That's seems to be a fairly easy swaparoo there. And if Houston, didn't take care of business, they could be flipped right back around. Not that it matters to be number one in the AP poll in November, but I do think it's something you can see literally exactly how that would have played out by looking at what happened to Purdue. Now, Houston started off shooting the ball really well from behind the arc in this game, but they finished just 9 of 31. And with Oakland running zone for the duration, the really entirety, it felt like, of this game, shooting just 29% from behind the arc does not strike as a kind of like game-winning formula I thought Houston would have in a blowout in this one. What did happen, though, in a big kind of way, is Houston's rebounding carried them through. Houston won the rebounding battle 46-32, but perhaps more importantly, they had 18 offensive rebounds in this basketball game. Now, Houston missed almost 40 shots, but they had 18 offensive rebounds, so that completely changed the dynamic of that. And I was texting some folks during this game. It feels like malpractice to allow a team to zone Houston the whole game if they're going to struggle rebounding. I know I'm an assistant high school basketball coach, and so what do I know about things, right? I played some high school basketball and all that kind of jazz. I feel like it should be fairly common sense, but it's actually much harder to rebound in a zone because in a man-to-man situation, there's no hesitation as to who I box out. In a zone, if they've overloaded a side, finding out who your box out guy is takes that beat, that half second, that whatever. And when someone is crashing the glass like Houston is, and Houston does, that half second's important. That half second's really important. And it clearly was important enough that Oakland could have used it. Now, Houston dominates glass this one, dominates the scoreboard in this one. And frankly, also kept a pretty clean sheet, just 6 turnovers in this game compared to 20 assists. You heard that correctly, 20 assists. They moved the ball really, really effectively against that Oakland zone. the same zone that gave Purdue fits just a few days ago. And look, I don't mean to rag on Purdue and Painter as much as it is fun to think about Houston beating them in what essentially was their own place last year in the Sweet 16. It is a barometer because that's a top tier team in America and a very well coached team. And this is, how do you do against the exact same opponent within the same week? And Houston turned around and blew the doors off of them. If anything, Houston, I think, should have the whole country looking at Purdue funny after this one because Michigan also blew the doors off of Oakland, right? And so Oakland very well could win 22, 25 games this year. I want to stress that much as well. They might win that league and conference. I would not be shocked, and I maintain it after Houston blew them out. I would not be shocked if Oakland beat UCF on Monday as a Big 12 team. I think that highly of what they're doing. And that Brody Robinson kid's a kid you can go to war. Houstonian, by the way, Houstonian. He's a kid you can go to war with, right? Now, I kept you in the comments, Chris, you're saying to rag on Purdue, and it is fun to do that. But I think what's interesting in this game is that actually in the late second half, they were talking about commentary with Coach Sampson, the coach staff during the week. And they said, quote, when did you start working on zone stuff to get ready for this? When you knew you were going to see zone for 40 minutes. I was like, oh, yesterday. Like, coach is just a building, teaching kind of guy. And it's November. He's like, we got other stuff to work on besides our zone offense. Like, we'll figure it out, whatever. And that's what it looked like. 20 assists. Like, look, I know, again, Oakland is not a Big 12 team. I get it. But dear Lord, this is a team that kept up with Purdue just last weekend. And I really think that that's frankly, a team with a lot of young, new guys, a rotation kind of thing here. Because Houston really, as young as they are, and we're going to spend a whole second segment in a moment talking about 3 freshmen that are really freaking good for what it's worth. And as young as Houston is, and as young as the Cougs are, and as inexperienced as some of their guys are in all of that, right? This team, and they hadn't played Auburn yet. They played Auburn's second game at the gates last year. I get it. This does feel like a team that is clicking better in game 3 than the team was a year ago. Part of that is you're not changing point guards, right? Going from Miles Uzan to Miles Uzan is different than going from Jamal Shedd to Miles Uzan, especially when Uzan spent a lot of his first offseason in Houston with a mask on his face because he broke his nose, right? Like, that changes things as well. I would also point out that, look, Javier Francis was a great off-the-bench big, but he did start the year last year as a starter. There was some indecisiveness as to what lineup you're going to play. Houston knows what they're doing, right? They figured out who has what role. It feels like very quickly on the year, and that may get tested later against Auburn next weekend or in Vegas or whatever when you're playing tougher competition. But they feel like everyone's got a clear, visible, definable role, right? And Houston walks into a game where you're presumably playing a tournament team. And as Shredder here points out, that's still a tournament team at the end of the day, right? That's a team you would see in the first week in the NCAA tournament. And Houston walks into a game like that on a Wednesday night with a gigantic game circled this weekend. Auburn beat you in your place last year. Auburn's an SEC caliber opponent. They have a future pro point guard, Tahad Pettiford. That point guard ate your lunch, and you were his coming out party a year ago. They were a Final Four team. You're going to their place this weekend. Every reason to be unfocused and maybe have a sloppy game against Oakland on Wednesday night. And instead, they kind of put the country on notice. And look, how much can the number 1 team in America put the country on notice? Feels like you've been noticed. I get that. But I love Andy and Isaac. They're really great at what they do. Even my own counterparts over Locked On College Basketball, like, this feels, presumptive to make Houston the number 1 team in America already. Can you argue with it now? Honestly, the same exact trap game that Purdue almost got by, Houston was never close. It was never close. And I think that speaks volumes to what Houston's built. Chris here chimes in just recently, and I love the back and forth, Chris. Oakland struggled because our placement program are terribly intimidating. This team plays much faster than our former, more methodically selves. This team can speed up the game immediately. I think part of that, if we're being honest, Chris, you got 2 point guards, right? You can constantly kick the ball ahead, constantly moving. Let's be honest, one of those point guards is lightning in a bottle in Kingston Flemings. You can truly play 4 out or 2 guys inside with the way that JoJo and Chris Syanak can operate, the 2 big guys. You can also go hyper small with Chase McCarty and Chris at the center and be super quick across the board. This team is built to do a lot of different styles of basketball. And I felt like they struggled in exactly 0 of those styles of basketball tonight. I want to talk more about the freshmen in this game because they're the new pieces. They're the new toys. They're a ton of fun to talk about. Ton of fun to watch, those freshmen. Before we get to all that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now the NBA is back in action, college basketball is back in action, college football is in full swing. The NFL is past the midseason point. Hockey is going on. They tell me everything is happening, and the best place to get on the action was the FanDuel. Because even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to different fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a much bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Head to FanDuel.com today. Sign up and play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Park Ainsworth, locked on Coogs, and #1 podcast network for sports in the world, Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you all for helping us get there. I want to talk about the freshmen this one, not because I think everyone gets enamored with the new toy, the new thing, and I want to admit some of that is admittedly me too. Right, we've been watching this program for a long time. We know who JoJo Tugler is. We know who Emmanuel Sharp is. We know who Ramon Walker is. We know who Kelvin Sampson is. And what's been awesome about the Houston Cougar program is as people come through, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Houston Cougar basketball is Houston Cougar basketball. And almost doesn't really matter who's got the jersey on at some point. And then that Kingston Flemings guy put on a jersey. And you're like, oh my God, he's got our jersey on. This is awesome. And he really, I have to go back and find it. I need to go back and find it. Between his sophomore and junior season, Houston had an offering on him. He was already high on Houston's board, already high on Tech's board, Grant McCaslin, who had just gotten to Tech. And he's a public school kid playing in the Puma circuit from San Antonio. And the commentary, I was like, this kid looks like Derrick Rose. He's effortlessly faster, jumps higher, making the right play, making the right read, high basketball IQ. It just is natural. And I don't mean that in a way that it implies like he's not incredibly diligent and doesn't work. Those things all make him who he is. But Kingston is just different. And what's crazy about Kingston is everyone's made a big deal, myself included, about this is the highest ranked class to ever come to the University of Houston between Isaiah and Chris Syanak and Kingston Fleming. And people forget about Bryce Jackson because he's probably going to redshirt, right? But one of the top guys in the city, right, for what it's worth. And of those 3 that are playing right now, Kingston was 3rd. There were people that questioned if Kingston could really do it. There were people that called out Kingston's level of competition because of the Puma circuit or San Antonio Brennan. He got snubbed from the McDonald's game because he didn't go to one of those big fancy academies. Let's just be honest, his resume read he was the state player of the Gatorade player of the year in the state of Texas. Texas high school basketball. And he did not get to go to McDonald's because he was a public school kid that didn't go to the IMGs or the whatevers. And I don't mean this as slights to them, but more so as what else were you watching if you didn't think he was one of the best point guards in America? Like one of the best, single digit 1, 2, 3, 4 point guards in America. Just incredible. And the speed he plays with, the pace he plays with are obviously phenomenal. That was on full display. I love Brody Robinson. Again, that Houston area kid. Nothing to do with Kingston. Could not do anything with Kingston. No one could do anything with Kingston tonight. He had 19 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, a steal, and a block. There was a stretch there we had assist, dunk, or layup, dunk, or back. I might have that backwards. Just incredible. And again, it's a lot of effort that goes into it. I don't mean this in a way that negates that. It just looks like it's second nature to him the whole time. It's so natural. And Kingston's been phenomenal. His counterpart, as far as freshman in the starting lineup, is Chris Syanak. And Chris is the guy that came in, everyone projecting, and I probably fairly, that he's going to be a one-and-done guy. Everyone looks at him as the kind of guy that, like, his upside is to the roof. He's 6'11", he's 240, he's long arms. This was Houston's third game, and then they had the two scrimmages. This is the first time in a Houston Cougar uniform he hasn't gotten 10 rebounds. He also played 20 minutes, right? But the thing with Chris, to me, is not necessarily the rebounds or the scoring. He's not proven to be a dynamic scorer for Houston yet, although he can hit shots from multiple different spots on the floor. Chris defensively is one of the most impressive prospects I've seen, and I'm including Jarris Walker. I'm including he is 6'11", 240 pounds. There were multiple possessions he kept pace with and beat two spots a 5'11" senior point guard. He's got him outweighed by 80 pounds, got a foot on him, and he's beating him with his chest and feet to different spots on the floor. It's not supposed to happen like that. It's just not. And he moves so well, and he's got great footwork. And it's basketball IQ too. And he did go to one of those academies. He went to Link Academy. He's originally from Louisiana. Went to Link Academy, and he's been very well coached. And I think, for what it's worth, that Kingston's also very, very well coached at San Antonio Brennan. But the Link Academy is on a national scale because they play a national schedule and all that. And Chris has national level coaches. And Chris, just the way he plays is so smooth. Carlos here chimes in that AJ DeBonsa is going to struggle with Houston. I think a lot of these freshmen, whether it's AJ or Koa Pete or whomever, like, Chris is going to be able to cover them. And I'm not saying you're going to hold either one of those guys to a goose egg. That doesn't happen. They're also talented, right? But, like, Chris is going to hold his own. Chris is absolutely going to hold his own in all those matchups. And then his jump shot's coming. His offense is coming. He hit more shots tonight. It wasn't his, he's not his high school dominating self on offense. He was 5'11" from the field. He did have, though, pinned a block on one end, sprinted the other end, had a dunk in a way that felt like Shaq from the 90s. Like, it felt like that kind of speed for Chris Syanak. Really, really dominant. And the third guy, Isaiah Harwell, probably has the most easily translated game to college, but he's still coming off those knee injuries. And I think there were moments in the second half, it looked like he was coming back from those knee injuries still. He's like not quite in a full sprint, not quite opening up his legs, whatever, not quite. And as a car zooms by, that sounded like illegally fast. I look at Isaiah and his second half versus his first half. I commented in the first half. I thought it was moving fairly well. I wonder, and work with me here, if sitting for halftime, not starting the second half, if those kinds of things actually like stiffen him up in a weird way. Because when he's fluid and going, I mean, he got a steal and a couple dunks tonight. He's also, like, when he was in high school, had like Devin Booker like off ball movement, catch and shoot stuff in his game. When he can fly around, he's as good as anyone too. I wonder, though, if what's happening is Chris Syanak came in the year thinking he's a one and done. Everyone thinks he's a one and done. Everything has some, like, he's been projected top 7, top 8 pick in the draft. You got to take that. I'm not going to talk again to coming back with that prospect, right? Isaiah Harwell, because he's a gigantic wing that can shoot the lights out the ball, has been also projected to be a draft pick, first rounder this year, if not next year, right? All that kind of stuff. Kingston Flemings, though, guys. Look, we'll see what he does against Tahad Pettiford on Sunday. And I'm taking Kingston. I always think Kingston. Kingston Flemings, if he does to Tahad Pettiford what I think he can do to Tahad Pettiford, you're going to have people talking about him as a first-round pick too. He is every bit of 6'4" and growing. He's filled out some. He elevates well. He shoots well. He passes well. there will be a freshman moment at some point, and I'm surprised we haven't really hit one yet for him. It might be this Sunday, and prove me wrong. But until we get to that freshman moment, until we see that happen, I really don't understand how he's and like I want Kingston to wear a Houston Cougar jersey as long as possible. He's got 3 games right now where he looks like a pro. 3 for 3. I don't know, man. And like, if this is November of his freshman year, what does January look like? February, March, April. What does the rest of the year look like? He's freshman. He's freshman, man. They're good. A lot of learning to do. Like they still make mistakes. And I mean, say they played mistake-free basketball. They did not. But man, those guys look good. They look really, really good. I want to talk about what this game means and why you draw stuff out of a big blowout win over Oakland in the middle of the week. Before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Supply House, because when opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward. Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow for 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Real-time inventory and honest lead times helps keep you from punting on projects, while the industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Listen, got a house a little over a year ago. They don't tell you how much stuff you got to fix when you get a house. It feels like once you got to fix it, you don't have a whole lot of time to do it. Supply House, that like quick 24-hour delivery, that's a big, big deal for someone who's not very handy like myself. The other big deal is you can join the free Trademaster program and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com. Sign up for free. Use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Parker Ainsworth, locked on Coogs here. Primarily Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network in the world. Now, a lot of people, especially when I post a video this week about a podcast episode this week about how I kind of think Oakland's going to be a trap game for somebody. And I maintain that Oakland is a tournament team. Oakland might even win a tournament game. I also think that Oakland has a real good chance to beat Central Florida on Monday. And if I'm Michigan State on December 20th, I'm trying not to sleepwalk that game either. Oakland is solid. And the way they pack that zone in, if you're having a bad shooting night and you're like sleepwalking a little bit, like they will beat some good teams. Right. However, I will say that when things click for Houston like they did tonight, this one was never going to be close. And I was trying to make sure that I didn't like overlook anybody, and ultimately I overworked the game almost like Houston did. And people wonder, like, well, okay, these Oakland games, and Oakland, admittedly, they didn't say this on the broadcast. A lot of college coaches, when they have a senior, will try and play games in the kids' hometowns, right? And so Brody Robinson, being a point guard, went to Houston Christian High School in Houston. I'm sure he's like, can I get a game in Houston for this kid? He's a senior on my team. And Sam's like, yeah, let's play. This will be a great game, right? As opposed to Rice or TSU or whoever. And they may have gone to say, you see this a lot of college coaches, especially those smaller schools, do it as a way to like make sure a kid gets to play in front of their hometown, right? And maybe that's why this game gets scheduled or whatever. I really think, though, what's fascinating about Houston and the way they schedule games is it's not just that they constantly play these tournament team, like small school tournament teams for their quote unquote bye games to start the year, right? But they do. Towson will be a tournament team too. Look out. Lehigh is like one of the top 14th in the Patriot League this year. Apparently, I didn't know that going into the year, but they really have pretty good Patriot League year projections based on who came in and who left or whatever, right? If you look at Sampson's scheduling, there's also something about not just the level of talent that he's playing against. He's finding things to work on. Look, this camp guy at Oakland has been there longer than I've been alive. They're going to run a zone. They're going to run a zone today. They're going to run a zone in 1987. They're going to run a zone in 1994. They're going to run a zone in 2002. They're running a zone. And Sampson has a program that at times in the last 5 years has hit a ceiling when their offense gets stagnant or whatever, right? And zones are made to muck up your offense, to make you slow down, to make you stagnant. Now, I have my other problems with zone, including that I think they're for cowards, but that's neither here nor there. I really think that what you see Sampson do with games like this is he knows at some point in January or February against a Big 12 team, they're going to come out and some coach going to think, I got Houston now. I'm going to zone them. And what Sampson knows, and what you and I both know, because you're an everydayer here at Locked On Cougs, is that you don't really want the first time you play a decent zone to be in January. That's not a winning formula. You don't want the first time you play a team that shoots a lot of threes or shoots a high percentage from three. They didn't actually shoot that many today. Credit Houston defense. You don't want that to be BYU, right? You don't want that zone team to be Utah. You want to get those learning moments on video for the staff to put together early. So when you're saying it again in the heat of battle in January, it's been said before. They've heard it before. They know the teaching points already, right? And so hats off to Sampson and the guys for that, because that does feel like what Houston's doing here, right? Another thing I want to say that looked like Houston's doing here to me is you saw a handful of different rotations, and they're finding ways to get different guys active. Like, I firmly believe now, after having watched Mercy Miller do it in the first half, if they play a team that goes to a zone for stretches of a game, you're going to see more Mercy Miller in that game. It feels like a built zone buster. He finds space on the floor really well. He elevates and shoots from the mid-range and deep. He cuts the backside. They ran a cool couple sets where they had four guards out and a big in. It was both JoJo, it was Khalifa, it was Syanak a little bit. And when the ball got to one side, they'd flash the backside guards a high post. And on the entry, they ran 3 or 4 different kinds of actions to kind of get back to 4 out. And when it was Syanak as the big guy, he could actually rotate out to the guard spots as well, which was interesting to watch. And what was fascinating was it was just simple overload the zone, high-low actions. It wasn't revolutionary in that sense, but they had the motion of it down so well. It looked like they were almost running like a motion offense while also overloading a zone. And I think it was moving too fast for Oakland to really know which was happening, right? Shredder points out Miller and Flemings against the zone was crispy. The guards against the zone were really, really strong. I think Chase McCarty is kind of a cheat code against the zone. He took a hard fall tonight. I put on Twitter, I want to stress that is not a medical opinion. I am not a medical person. I teach history by day. But I do think it looked like to me he got a concussion. And I think, frankly, if he walks away from that with just a concussion, you might be lucky because it could have been a lot worse. We're not talking spine and neck kind of stuff, the way he fell from pretty high up onto hardwood floor. Cross our fingers, are doing okay. So obviously thinking about the health and all of that of everyone, but specifically of Chase McCarty right now. Took a hard fall. I think he's probably just going to be concussed. That's a week or 10 days unless something goes wrong, right? So we'll see. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's fine. Maybe they were up by so many points. It was precautionary. Actually, that's probably the best option. I just don't know how realistic it is, right? I've been sick for several days now. And when I record these not live, I can hit a pause button and cough off mic. And I couldn't quite get to the pause there. Almost made it through a full show. Almost did it. Whew. Anyway, Houston really, though, did look like a team that was both excelling and dominating the court. I was about to say the field, dominating the court while working on things. And the reason that Sampson schedules these kinds of games against teams that you're like, what are we doing here? Right? Why don't we play Sam and Rice and get those to be our low school, small school kind of games, whatever. He's playing these kinds of teams because he wants to work on things. And evidently, tonight they ran small lineups, they ran shooting lineups, and they were trying to outpace a zone in ways that bluntly worked. Now, We'll see if it translates when they play Kansas State, and Tang won't run a zone, or somebody, Arizona State, somebody that hands them a zone come January, February. But maybe hanging 78 on a zone your first time doing it is also good enough to turn it to where teams don't zone you. We'll see. We're breaking all that down and more at Locked On Cougs. We got Auburn this weekend, bye week in football. We also have Big 12 this, Big 12 that. It's the middle of basketball recruiting season. Commits are flying around. Let's go snag one or two. We're breaking all things down here at Locked On Cougs. Hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. Locked On Cougs, premier to Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, your number one overall, 3-0 Houston Cougars each and every day. Go Cougs.